Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to another episode of the Chrissie Mayr podcast. We are on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, and SoundCloud. And if you're listening to us on iTunes right now, go ahead and leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all the reviews that you guys have left so far. In fact, I'm gonna read one right now. Here we go. Ooh. Okay, this was from M. Russo Marov. Save. Okay, not the best speller. The title of the review is just Save American. And the review says, "You're a great American comedian." Well, thank you. Thanks, M. See, I appreciate the reviews. I'm going to be performing in Lakewood, New Jersey, October 16th with Comedians of the Compound. Yes, that's my next date that you can see me at the Blue Claw Stadium out there in Lakewood, New Jersey. And then I am going to be headlining in Morris Plains, New Jersey at Tiff's Ale House, also known as the Dojo of Comedy, November 6th. Quick shout out to our sponsors, Cushy Dreams, my go-to for all things CBD related. Join the men and women who are sick of vapes and gummies and want to smoke their CBD. As you can see, they have different indica sativa blends like Relax, Dream, Create, Hustle, Peace, Energy. So whatever you want to do with your day, Cushy Dreams has you covered. They're doing tons of independent lab tests to ensure compliance and purity. You can read all about them on their website, cushydreams.com. Grown here in the USA, legal everywhere, ships everywhere. I love these guys. They deliver a quality product, and it's helped me with my anxiety for sure. So go to cushydreams.com, KUSHY dreams.com, and use promo code CMP at the checkout, and you're going to get 20% off every order. Do it, guys. Smoke your CBD. And also a quick shout out to Drome. This is a new sponsor that I'm very excited about. DROM, Drome. We all know dating apps are terrible. They're superficial. They're these face swiping apps. They can be addictive. They claim to be experts, but they usually just end up wasting your time. The solution is Drome, a values-based matching site. If you're conservative, things probably won't work out with someone who's a total lefty. Same with religion, lifestyle, how to raise your children, and other core values. Sure, somebody could change to meet you where you are, but why not meet your perfect match right out the gate? Drome is a free new values-based dating app. You pick your deal breakers and deal makers, and as soon as somebody matches one of them, you get a notification. Drome is also video only for more human interaction. So go to drome.date/CMP in your phone's browser, click the iOS or Google button to install, and use the invite code CMP to sign up. And if you already found the love of your life, tell your sad single friends. Tell them about Drome. That's DROM.date/CMP. Designed to meet your perfect match. It's free to use. Why not? Give it a shot. You got nothing to lose, boys and girls. All right. I'm so excited to have this gal on the pod. I believe we had done a swap cast together several weeks back, but now I've got her all to myself. She's a recovering investment banker, and she has a new book out called The War on Small Business. So excited to have her on CMP. Carol Roth, how are you, girl?
Chrissy, I'm so happy to be with you on a Friday. And I just have to say, I adore you, and I don't know how they kept us apart for so long.
Why did they keep us apart so long?
I feel like they knew it was going to be trouble. If like the two of us got together, there could be some bad things that happen. And so I just like this is like the interesting thing to me, how it's like we can be in these sort of adjacent spaces for so long, and then I'm like, oh my God, this woman, she's gorgeous and she's hilarious, and like, where's she been all my life? And like you said, a few months ago we bumped into each other and we did a little swapping action, and yeah, it's like I'm just happy that you were brought into my circle, into my sphere.
Yeah, the stork came along and brought me into your world. We were doing like a libertarian swap cast, and yeah, I think you were taken aback. You were like, "Wow, libertarians are so dirty." Like, I think you were.
Well, I just didn't know what I was signing up for. Was like doing book promotion, so I was like literally saying yes to. I'm like, "Oh yeah, sure, I'll to anything. And I was like, oh, maybe I should look into what it is that I'm saying yes to. But it was fun. We had a good time, and shout out to the boys that were on the Swapcast as well.
Yeah, I think that was the Tower Gang,
the Tower Power, and Clint from Liberty Lockdown. So we had a nice fun time, and I got to do some of my South Park impressions. So good times were had by all.
Those were great, and maybe
Thank
if you're
you.
feeling inspired at some point during this pod, you can bust one out. No pressure.
No, none at all. None at all. That's one of my things. I like to do voices. I'm a pretty good mimic, so if I heard something and it's in a certain range, I can do. Comedian is my alter ego.
You have it in you. There's a funny person inside you, Carol, and you just have to let her out.
Oh no, I crack myself up. My husband says all the time, like he'll see me like hysterically laughing in the kitchen. He's like, "Oh, did you tell yourself a joke again?" And I'm like, "I did. It was great. We have a good time, me and myself." So.
You have to laugh. I know I laugh at the dumbest things, and as I get older, I'm doing a lot more just talking to myself. Which who knows if that means I need pills or something, but. Do
you use different names, or is it just is
no,
it all Chrissie?
I do a lot of like what I think the dogs are thinking and saying to each other, and like I try to read their minds and okay,
maybe you're telling yourself a joke again. This is good. This is what happy, well-adjusted people do. We go through and find the happy points in life.
I'm soon to be a COVID survivor. I've had COVID this week, and I was just telling Zuby that because I had him on just a couple hours ago. What's blown my mind is how upset people are that I'm not more sick. Like they're very pissed that I'm not on a ventilator, and I don't know what to say. Who knows? Maybe tomorrow will be ventilator day for me, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Yeah, it is really odd, people's reaction, because they have been gripped by so much fear, and they've shifted and changed their lives and the lives of everybody around them for something that, not to say it's not serious. For some people, it obviously is very serious, but for many people, it isn't. There are many of us. I am myself a COVID survivor. You're a soon-to-be COVID survivor.
I'm going to get a shirt made. Don't
want to joke. And so, but they've made it out to be like this thing, like, oh my God, you've got it. You're a bad person. This is, some reflection on you. And it's a virus. Virus gonna virus. So not to say that, again, there isn't a section of the population where it's very serious for, but we all sort of know the general risks. And for most people, there's a way to mitigate and make our way through it. And the reality is it's probably going to be with us, like, until the end of time.
Like your annoying uncle. You're like, okay.
No, he's not going to be with us till the end of time.
Just don't make out
eventually.
Yeah. Just don't listen to his dumb jokes. Is The War on Small Business your first book?
It is not. It is not. I wrote a book 10 years ago called The Entrepreneur Equation, which was all about how hard it is to be a small business owner. And it was all about evaluating the risks and rewards of having a small business. And then, of course, I swore I wasn't going to write another one because it is like, it's such a time sink and there's so much involved with it. But I was approached during the pandemic by HarperCollins to really do an economic assessment of what was happening. And like a total moron, I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds like fun. Seems like a great thing to do. And it was so challenging because it was this thing that was sort of unfolding real time as it was happening. And I'm glad in retrospect that I did it, because now they're trying to rewrite, the history of what's happened. So to have an actual record of what's happening, as well as to educate people about individual rights and small business and capitalism and all those kinds of things. I felt like it was really important, but it was crazy. My first book was all about the risks of being a small business owner. And never did I think the number one risk to being a small business owner was the US government coming in and shutting you down. And so it was a very, very, very different perspective. And I see you're on that big site, which I'm a capitalist. Of course, people can go and buy it there.
Should we prefer somewhere else?
I've been telling people to buy it local and to go to places like bookshop.org that fulfill from local small businesses, so that we can actually put our dollars into the small business economy. So again, I'm a capitalist. I just want you to buy it and to read it. That's the most important thing. But if you're, open to the idea of perhaps shifting some of those dollars towards a smaller business, it's kind of hard to write a book called The War on Small Business and say, and buy that at Amazon. So.
And okay, so you said bookshop.org?
.org, yeah. This is a really cool site for a lot of different books. Many of the kind of well-published books from big retailers are there, and they'll fulfill it from a small business bookseller. Wow. And then it's really, really cool because you can see like, oh, this many dollars went to a small business, and they show cumulatively how much see, look at the top.
My God, how much I feel better already.
So look, you can get in multiple formats there. How amazing is that? So
wow, this is like, this one's a different shape.
Yeah, that's it, because it's a different format.
Okay.
Yeah.
And look, Small Business for Dummies. What is this? An Amish couple? What is this? Oh no, this is just like
this is just a generic stock photo of small business owner.
Yeah, they look like, how do we start our artisanal candle company in Brooklyn?
Exactly.
Well, like, it's not gonna happen, Jerry.
You need some money to start that up, and you don't have any.
I love this. I think maybe I will full on switch, because I think I was just using Amazon out of just a default setting, just because I know it will arrive quickly, and I'm like on a real book kick the last year and a half.
Well, I hope you will partake in the War on Small Business. What else have you read? Is there anything else interesting that you really love?
On this site or in general?
In general, like on your book kick. What's sort of the book that's like rocked your socks?
Oh yeah. Okay, so I'm really loving this, and I swear I don't just read books of people that I interview. But I felt like this was required reading, because I did talk to him the other day. But as you can see, I'm not finished yet. I'm really loving Brave New World. This is like a good.
I just ordered that. It's so weird because of all of the kind of dystopian books that we were assigned to read when we were growing up. I never read that one, so that one I just got as well, and is sitting and will probably be diving into this weekend.
And I still have so many I haven't finished reading. Michael Malice's New Right. I mean, and then it's like a good mix. And then I have like Adam Carolla's book. So it's like, if I support you and I'm a big fan of you, I'm definitely going to buy your book. And then you can
definitely read at least a quarter of your book.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the one I've had. This one has been sitting here. I think Carrie Smith told me to read this. Oh no, maybe James Lindsay. Kindly Inquisitors attack the new attacks on free thought, like a free, free speech book. Oh God. And then there's so many. The Ordinary Men, which talks about how just like ordinary men were able to, out each other, like during the Holocaust,
Ooh.
I was like, oh, you mean it's a book about right now?
Yeah.
And then I ordered all the racist Dr. Seuss books.
Collector editions.
I had to collect them all. I mean, amazing. these were like really printed in a bootleg way. Like
it kind of looked like it.
Oh yeah. I was like, there's no way. Like they don't have this golden spine. I was like, this is really horrible. But I wanted to like read all these stories and see what the big deal was. Spoiler alert! Like there's no.
There isn't one. They ate spoiled eggs. That's the big thing. The eggs were green.
It's in this one. The only big deal is like it said the Chinaman ate with sticks. That was the biggest. Yeah. Like big fucking deal. Okay. Like everybody's eating with something. I don't know. It makes me so mad. But it's a good way to insert people to like snap up books that they normally wouldn't. Like I'm starting to feel like, just buy. There's no such thing as buying too many books, because you don't know how long they're going to be around for.
Yeah, no, and it's a good thing. It's actually, I feel like a much better use of time to read books than to like read Twitter and things that I spend way too much time doing. Yeah,
it's interesting. You mentioned with writing your book, like you didn't realize that history would kind of be rewritten in your lifetime. What are some examples of that you've seen?
So some of the sources have actually been pulled out, like since I've sourced them. Things like I think it's the Secretary of Health and Human Services who came out and said, stop buying masks in last February of 2020. And so that tweet has been removed from Twitter from the time that this book was published. It was out like in June, and at this point in time is now gone. Now, granted, there are other sources you could find it, but it like eventually, all those links kind of get buried and go away. So that's definitely a very specific example, and some other sources that have been kind of like, we'll just kind of delete those. And then just the idea that there wasn't economic devastation. I've seen lots and lots of op-eds and the like saying, they did a great job and they saved the businesses, and really there was no economic fallout from this. And I'm like, well, tell that to the like millions of small businesses that were murdered and are never coming back and or are struggling to survive, and people who are on the hook for debt and the like. So I think that the media is trying to paint a different picture about what happened, and I lay out the facts and you can come to the conclusion yourself.
It's like with everything else, the media wants to think that you're alone in your beliefs. So if your small business tanked during the last year and a half, well, it was probably just yours, and it was going to tank anyway. And I guess you couldn't hack it, you couldn't cut it. It seems like they're trying to give that same feeling to small business owners, because I don't see very much, if any, stories done on how many businesses have bit the dust.
They didn't even want to cover my book, to be perfectly honest. I mean, there are a lot of wonderful people in decentralized media and a handful in regular media that did cover it, but a lot of the big outlets, you would think, for all the lip service that's paid to, this is the backbone of the economy and we're here for the little guy and we want to tell these stories. A lot of people are like, no, either because they were complicit because of their big sponsors who really benefited from the outfall, or for the fact that it wasn't placing the blame on one party. I feel like a very fair assessment, and talked about these systemic issues which go through both of the major parties. And so since it wasn't Trump's war on small business or Biden's war or the Dems war, it didn't have that like, oh, well, like we could throw just these people under the bus and blame them, because the reality is there's plenty of blame to go around. And as I said, it's systemic. So I think that also kind of didn't serve the media's purpose, which is unfortunate. But, the feedback's been great. The sort of networking effect of the decentralized media and the podcasters and whatnot have been great, and there has been some really big support for it from great people like Glenn Beck and Dana Lash and Ben Shapiro and Jesse Kelly and whatnot. So the word definitely has gotten out somewhat, but hoping over longer periods of time people will take the time to get educated.
What I guess it's easy for us to see more so what during the last year and a half, like what during the pandemic was sort of used to kind of torpedo small businesses. But
hey, everybody, I guess it's just me that's live, and Chrissie has she was so overwhelmed by the excitement of me talking about the war on small business, she has disappeared.
I'm still here.
But now,
okay.
See, I told you, there's like the energy between us was
away,
so magnetic that, I'm just going to step in and just run the show, if you don't mind.
I usually tell people before we start, I'm like, shall I disappear? Just keep talking. But, you already know what to do.
I'm a pro. What can I say? Anyway, I think you had a question.
Oh, I did. Yeah. What did you notice like that was already in place before the pandemic that kind of, I guess, made things worse during the pandemic? Like what systems were in place, or what kind of was already working, not in the favor of small businesses even before all this pandemic mess started?
Yeah, I mean, one of the most important chapters and one of everybody's favorite chapters in the book is actually about the Federal Reserve and what the Federal Reserve has been doing to disrupt risk, disrupt sort of the shift in access to capital, and give an advantage to wealthy, big companies over small companies, as well as sort of the retirees and savers and people of Main Street. That structure has been in place for a long time. And since the Great Recession, I mean, it already had trillions of dollars on its balance sheet and had been intervening in the markets and artificially suppressing interest rates to create this, insane sort of non-free market situation that tilted the playing field before COVID even happened. And that just sort of gave them another excuse to double down and get to a point where it's just, beyond ridiculous. So that certainly was in place. Things like regulatory capture and just the picking of winners and losers, that's been going on sort of since the beginning of time. And so, the fact that you would have Amazon advantaged or Walmart advantaged, if that's not a new thing, it just happened in a different way during the pandemic.
Wow, that's interesting. So I wonder, like, what are your criticisms of like the PPP or like the small business loans? Because I feel like I'm not somebody who owns a small business, but like, who knows? Maybe this podcast will turn into one day. But they just, it seems like from the government and from the media's perspective, oh, it's so simple. All you have to do is just sign up, and it just seems like the more small business owners I would talk to, the more hurdles they had to jump to actually get that money and then use it.
Yeah, no, they didn't. If you had wanted to help small businesses, if you had taken an appropriate, liberty first stance and said, this is not too big to fail. This is not, a bunch of banks went rogue on risk, and so we need to bail them out. This is us deciding that we are arbitrarily going to be shutting down some part of the economy, not based on data and science, but based on clout and connections, because we quote unquote have to do something, right? Have to do something. So, we're going to target these particular businesses, but because we understand property rights, eminent domain, we're taking your property for the public good. We're shutting you down for the public good. We're going to compensate you appropriately. That probably would have been, not my choice in the way to go about doing that. But you could have done that for probably $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion. You could have bought yourself 2 to 3 months for those businesses to keep everybody on the payroll, keep them working, and just say, we're going to pay you as workers, just stay home, everything's going to continue on, and then figure out the way to mitigate risk. Like, they could have done that if that was actually the objective, but that wasn't the objective. What they did in the CARES Act is that and then in the subsequent acts that followed, is that they spent like $6.6 trillion. The first tranche of the PPP was so small and organized in such a fashion that favored the biggest companies out there that were quote unquote small businesses, that it was exhausted in 13 to 14 days. So they had to actually go back through the well, as opposed to in the CARES Act, when you had places like colleges with huge endowments, or the Kennedy Center that has all of these assets that were just given money. Like, here's 25 million, Kennedy Center, for deep cleaning of a building that's not in use, whatever. As a small business, you had to compete, you had to jump through hoops, you had to fit the criteria. There are small business owners I've heard that didn't fit the criteria, whether it's because they had contractors instead of employees, or because they had previous bad debts, or whatever it was. So, in the first tranche, many weren't even considered, and later tranches, if they tried again, some of those got in, but they got a fraction of the money that they needed for the infringement on their rights. They got a fraction of the overall dollars that were spent. A lot of small businesses didn't want to take down the money because they just didn't trust the government at that point, and saying, okay, well, does this open me up to an audit, or like what else does this do that they're not telling me? Are they really going to, even let me get this, and have this forgiven, or are they going to put me on the hook for it? So there was just so much distrust in place because of the structure of it, when it all could have been done very seamlessly and easily and rectified, on tax filings during the following year. And I laid this out in an op-ed in March of 2020. So it's not like nobody ever heard this idea. It was out there floating around. They just chose not to do that because at the end of the day, that wasn't their intention. And that never was going to be their intention. And anytime they say that they're doing things for the little guy, we know it's a load of crap. The little guy always ends up getting screwed, and it's always benefits big government, big business, and big special interests.
Because you look at like Amazon and Walmart, and they really thrived during the pandemic. It seems, I don't know, like why would they have to take out small businesses? I feel like they're going to do great no matter what. I don't know. It seems like maybe it's naive to think like, why would just like live and let live, like see who makes it, I guess.
I mean, I do think there is some short-sightedness. I feel like both in the market as well as with some of these companies that eventually, if you you kind of get rid of all of your customers, like, and they don't have the ability to create wealth, and not as much comes back to you. But I guess they figure if they're one of a handful that is left standing, that's a more of a powerful position. I disagree with that, as somebody who's a fan of free markets, but that's probably the mentality, is we just want to be the ones that are in charge and control, have the power. And so what happened with the Amazons and the Walmarts and some of these other companies was really on two levels. One was the revenue bump they got when you shut down their small business competitors, and if you wanted to spend dollars, those dollars were increasing your revenue. But the second was in the stock market, because of all of the trillions of dollars that the Fed was pumping into the stock market. You had 7 tech companies that gained $3.4 trillion in value in 2020, at the same time that we had these millions of small businesses being murdered and fighting for survival. So, obviously it doesn't take a genius to know that there's something off in that equation if you're really trying to help the little guys. And a lot of people think about that first piece, but don't think as much about the second piece and the wealth creation and that value shift away from Main Street to Wall Street that was done by the Federal Reserve's intervention.
Why was the Fed pumping like millions of dollars into
trillions of dollars? Like we went right past billion, trillions of dollars
into just tech companies, or
into the markets overall. So they were inflating. They were going into the markets. They were, artificially suppressing interest rates. They were buying up, and they still are buying up, treasuries and mortgage-backed securities. They had a facility. They got permission to go in and indirectly buy things to support the markets, but they were investing in the bonds of Home Depot and Microsoft and big companies that didn't need support. And basically it was just straight up propping up the stock market and bringing a lot of additional money that had nowhere to go but to continue to inflate valuations in these stock prices. And so those investors and those companies ended up benefiting, and Main Street did not. It is the most historic transfer of wealth that we've ever seen.
Wow. And yet I feel like the media, they love to just focus on you make it sound like there's bodies in the streets and everybody's dying. And it's like, when I realized I had COVID, I was so pissed. I was like, wow, all this for a cough, a headache, a sore throat.
Well, there's just such a different approach to take with something like this. And I understand that maybe in the beginning they didn't know, but pretty quickly you had the data, and they could have said, listen, if you're of this age range, this is very serious. If you have these comorbidities, you should take some extra precautions. The rest of you, here's the data, go talk to your doctor. And that's the other thing that really pisses me off about everything, is I keep hearing all these mandates from government officials, from people on social media. This is what I'm telling you. And it's all you have to do is just say, go talk to your doctor. Because at the end of the day, I'm not listening to any of you. None of you have any sort of expertise or purview about my health choices. So if they really wanted it to be effective, that's, again, the tactic that they could have taken. But intentionally, they have not taken that tactic, because that is not what it is that they care about. They care about the power. They care about the control. They care about the stoking fears. They care about making the government bigger. And let's not let this crisis go to waste. And somebody asked me just yesterday, what's the number one thing our quote unquote leaders learned in the last 18 months? And the number one thing they learned is just how easily Americans are willing to give up their rights and freedoms. I mean, that's the learn. Yeah, I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, I'm embarrassed for everybody. But it's like, all right, a lot of us haven't had to stand up for anything in our whole lives. This is our generation's chance, I guess. This is our time to shine.
It is like it kills me to the core as like the unofficial self-nominated spokesperson for Gen X who just wants to be left alone and to say whatever, just leave me be. But it is the reality with freedom, is that you cannot be like that. You have to continually make sure that you have those freedoms available to us. And like you said, this is our opportunity to do something about that.
And even though you said like, all right, talk to your doctor, it's like, I personally feel like I would be hesitant to talk to my doctor, because I'd be like, well, who knows like what all kickbacks they might be getting for, like, I
should ask those questions to your doctor. You should ask. I mean, for not just this, for anything.
Really? You guys get money here?
Or talk to a couple of doctors. I mean, it's not unheard of, especially now with all of these apps where you can kind of connect and get these telemedicine, like talk to a handful of people, or find people that if you don't trust your own relationship. I mean, if you don't trust your own relationship with your existing healthcare provider, you should probably spend some time and invest time in finding one that you can. But yeah, you should always ask those questions.
Yeah, my doctor is like whoever is available at the time. Like, I don't have like just one. Yeah, you want to see if Carla? She's here. I'm like, sure. Like, let me just see whoever. But I also have this same. That's also how I work with like the waxing ladies. Like, I'll just take whoever's available.
All of these very important life decisions, Chrissy. I feel like you need to establish deeper relationships. You shouldn't just be letting anybody pour hot wax over your lady part.
That's what I've been doing. Just the whoever's around.
It's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's I feel like you need to. It's like the people are like, oh, like, well, here's a coupon for some plastic surgery, or maybe I'll go down to Tijuana. It's like, no, this is not the place where you want to discount people. Like, I'm all for saving your money, but like, this is not the place where you want to be scrimping and saving and looking for a deal. This is where we need to be focused on quality.
True. I would see videos of like girls who would go get like the Brazilian butt lifts, and they get it like on discount, like Groupon level, very cheap. And then there's a video of you see the girl like flipping around her butt implant, like it's round and then she flips it over and then it's flat and she could like put a drink on it, like her own like butt implant. So
oh my God.
I would never do that.
Well, I'm glad to know that you have some limitations and standards. The hot wax is a go. Yeah. But the butt implant is where you draw the line.
Yeah, I have enough back there. Thank you very much.
You are welcome.
I'm going to get to a couple of questions from the audience from Channel Julio. I hope to build a fitness business around the hashtag Patriot Challenge. Please help out a small business, Chrissy, by doing as many jumping jacks as you can while reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. This seems like a joke.
It seems like there's a hidden message in there, a little hidden agenda.
Yeah. Hey, my neighbor's daughter asked her doctor, why should a healthy young woman like me take the jab? And her doctor replied, there's no discussion, just take it.
Well, that's not here's the thing. This is not blind trust. This is you're asking the question to get information. So if that's the information you're getting, you need to get rid of that doctor and find a new trusted advisor. That's what advice is. Advice isn't just follow everything. It's getting information and processing it and making a decision. That's not getting information.
Yeah, the vibes on that sounds just like you do what I tell you to. I'm the dad. I don't.
Yeah, that's not the there's no explanation in there, and that's not the type of healthcare you should be getting.
True that. From George Habib, at what point do you become a small business rather than a freelancer, hustler, self-starter? What changes for you after becoming a business owner? Ooh, that's a good question.
It is a good question. And George, you might like my first book, The Entrepreneur Equation, because I actually talk about the categories. I come up with like 3 different categories. The first is a jobby, which is a hobby that's disguised as a job or a business, which I think is your sort of like hustler kind of side thing that you're talking about. And then I talk about job business, which is basically a business that's dependent entirely upon you. So if you go on vacation, there's no revenue coming in. If you get hit by a bus, the business ceases to exist. And not to say that there's anything wrong with the first two. In fact, they're great ways to try out a business. It doesn't create kind of equity value and wealth. You're building income, but you're not building something that's saleable. So what changes, and again, this is all dependent on your objectives, and this is not for everyone, but if you're trying to build something that has value apart from you that you can eventually sell, and you're building that wealth over long periods in time, you have to come up with something that shifts from it being entirely dependent on you to being scalable enough that it has a value apart from you. And so that's really that differential. And it's a very difficult thing to do. I mean, it's the reason why out of the, now it's 31.7 million small businesses in this country, only 6 million of them have employees, because hiring that first employee is challenging, it's expensive, not just in terms of salaries, but in terms of taxes and benefits and laws and all those kinds of things. But that is that next level up. And so if you're really looking for that wealth creation opportunity, you have to really think about how you're systematizing and scaling the business to go to that next level.
Ooh, wow, that's very thorough.
Yeah, it's fun. It's funny.
You wrote a book on this.
I did. I wrote a whole book about it. I think a lot of people, I've done a really good job of sort of like disassociating what I actually do for a living from Twitter. So I think people think I just like spend most of my time like on TV and on podcasts on Twitter just being snarky and stuff like that. But I actually have a very robust business background and have done billions of dollars of transactions, made a lot of people a lot of money. And so, business advice is something that, I have sort of a deep set of experience in.
Why? Yeah, I think it's good. You should be both snarky on Twitter and a boss at business advice. Would you say it's hopeless right now in 2021, the idea of starting a small business?
So I feel like entrepreneurs and small business owners, at their core have to be optimists. Like that's the whole, like you would never, if you looked at the statistics of, the failure rates of small business and how much they made, you would never start one based on like statistics. You have to have that optimism and that feeling that you are better suited to solve a problem at the right time than everybody else. And I feel like in any scenario, there are always opportunities. So it's just more challenging and you have more risks. But that doesn't mean the opportunities aren't there. It just means that you need to prepare for them in a different way. And so if you're that right person that is ready to take on those challenges, you just have to factor that into your risk reward evaluation, your entrepreneur equation, as we like to call it per the book title. But it's definitely not for everyone. Not everybody was cut out to be an entrepreneur. There are lots of people who are really good at the execution piece or being told what to do and going out to do it. There are a lot of people that don't have the risk tolerance. There are a lot of people that just don't have the mentality of like, I'm just going to keep doing this and like I hit the wall and I'm just going to keep going through and I'm going to go over the wall. I'm going to go around the wall. It takes a certain personality type. So it definitely isn't for everyone, but if you are that right person, there's still going to be that opportunity, even though it seems less hopeful than maybe it did, 5 or 10 years ago.
Are getting mentors an important part of this, or do you feel like you can sort of learn the entrepreneurial spirit, by just sort of like doing your own research or like, I don't know, watching YouTube video? I feel like you could learn just about anything from watching YouTube videos, but how important would you say are mentors?
So I would argue that watching YouTube videos is mentorship. I think that people are very caught up in this idea that there's this mythical business person who's going to like come down from the rafters and take you under their wing and introduce you to clients that are going to give you millions of dollars and shepherd your career. Like that doesn't happen. So, somebody that I know, he really interesting guy who's one of the producers, actually, of Pretty Women, the movie, came up with this concept called 5-minute mentors that have always stuck with me. And it's like having this conversation, listening to this conversation right now, or asking someone a pointed question at some point in time, or listening to a YouTube video, taking those collective experiences and interactions and letting them inform you, versus this idea that there is going to be this one person. Now, sometimes that does happen. And I actually have a really great mentee in the arena of investment banking. As you mentioned, I'm a recovering investment banker myself. And the way that our relationship sort of evolved wasn't that he came to me and was like, oh, hey, could you be my mentor? Like that doesn't happen. It's the outgrowth of a relationship. So he came to me and he said, it was referred by a friend of the family, and said, he was like he was so cute. He's like 16 years old. And he's like, I want to be an investment banker. I'm like, I didn't even know what an investment banker was when I was 16, but good for you. Like, what is it?
I was giving bad hand jobs.
I'm sure they were good. Don't put yourself down, Chrissie. I'm sure they were very good. Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, that could have been your entrepreneurial, kind of side hustle, side gig.
I've seen South Park episodes about that.
Exactly. Butter's Bottom Bitch, one of my favorite episodes.
All right, you love South Park.
I do.
Butters became a pimp.
Do you know what I am saying? So anyway, back to my mentee. So he came to me and he said, like, what are the things that I should be doing if I want to, down the road become an investment banker? And so we talked about things, and I gave him some really tactical things. Like, for any of you who might want to be an investment banker one day, things like, teach yourself how to do a comparable company analysis. Teach yourself how to do a discounted cash flow analysis. Like, learn the different. And I gave him like this whole spiel, and he's like, okay, thank you. And then he would like come back to me, from time to time, and ask like a pertinent question. And it was always like very specific, not and like, okay, am I doing these right things? Would you shift anything? Could you help me understand this? And so like, we just kind of built up this relationship, but it was always him coming to me, asking for the information. And it was very specific and pointed. And eventually, like, we developed a relationship. And by the time it was time for him to go get an investment banking job, I was like fully engaged and making recommendations and whatnot. And like, now it's clear, like, he is like, we have an official sort of mentor-mentee relationship. And I've guided him through some really cool things in his career, and he's kicking butt. But it came out of this like outgrowth of some like specific questions, trying not to use too much of the time. And there was a good fit there. And so that relationship evolved. And so that's really how a mentorship happens. It's not like signing up for something like, oh, fill out this application and I will become your mentor. So I think people just approach it the wrong way. But again, you don't need to have that person. That's sort of the exception rather than the rule. This was like a very roundabout, like we started in one place, we got sidetracked by like hand jobs, and then it came back to mentorship. But I feel like a lot of good information. Yeah, like exactly. Like life. It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor for life.
That's probably going to be the name of my autobiography, Sidetracked by Hand Jobs.
I feel like that's a catchy title.
Yeah, it was. It was a distraction. I don't know. I just feel like
a distraction.
It was a huge distraction. I think I spent a lot of my teenage and 20s very much worried about like if boys liked me, rather than like, hey, what is my unique skill set? Like, what am I cut out to? Thank God I found comedy. But I just like, I was truly floundering for like a good 10 years.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I wish I had people around me. Some people call those people parents. No, I mean, I had parents, but they were like, everyone's limited, right? Nobody's perfect. I'm not here to like shit on my parents, but like they weren't. And I didn't.
But let's go ahead and do so
neither
anyway.
Them nor were guidance counselors like, hey, here's what your strengths are. Here's what you can make money at. Here's what you should major in. I had my mom being like, you could work at a hotel one day, Christy. You should go.
It's interesting. It's interesting because neither of my parents went to college. My dad was a union electrician, and my mom, even though my parents separated, and so that's like a whole other story when I was in high school. But she was, for the time when I was younger, a stay-at-home mom, and then she had as we called it, the jobby, this like kind of side business that was like more of a hobby.
A jobby.
a jobby, and neither of my parents had any clue of what was going on. Like, they didn't know the name of any of my teachers. Like, I laugh at all of these parents now that are like super involved. I was like, my parents never like I didn't even have to go to school. Like, my mom called me out senior year like once a week. Like, it wasn't kind of a thing. But I had like other people who had parents that were very involved around them. So it was kind of like, oh, this person's doing that. Like, I could do that, you know, that kind of thing. But the one thing my parents gave me and gave to my sister as well is just sort of this unbridled sense of like self-confidence. And so there was this sort of walking through the like, well, yeah, I mean, if, you know, like, why should I not apply to the best business school? Like it didn't even occur to me, like, maybe that isn't a thing, or like I should be nervous, or like maybe having the self-doubts, like that just never factored in.
Wow.
Which is like the best thing I think a parent can give to somebody, is just having that, you know, that level of like, you're not completely insane, like self-confidence where you're like, not delusional, but just like, hey, like, you're not limited by anything. Like, if you want to do it, just go do it and work hard and whatnot. And I think that's really important. And I think not enough parents sort of instill that in their children. And especially now, it's so hard, you know, I can't imagine what my life would have been like and the changes if social media had existed when I was a teen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I feel like that I probably wouldn't be in the same place right now, because there's just so many downsides personally and then eventually professionally with that, that I feel like parents need to be a little bit more active than perhaps ours were.
Yeah, social media really can enhance or deplete your life so much just based on like what decade of life you're in. Like, for a kid now, for like a teenager, social media is a net negative.
Right, because you don't know who you are. You're not comfortable with who you are yet.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard enough once you are, right?
It's only going to distract you from building those early friendships. Like, yeah, and there's also, there's something to be said. Like, people can have friendships like over, you know, I talk to my like buddy when I play this video game, and every week, you know, we chat.
Sure.
It's like, that's no, I don't know. It's just not the same as like, you know, getting dirty in a sandbox. Not that I was in a sandbox.
Sneaking out of the house and going to Denny's at like 2:30 in the morning, and, you know, whatever else you did over there, Chrissy.
Yeah, you know what? Like, I didn't have video games because I was busy smoking on my parents' roof. I was trying to hide Marlboro Reds. I was just angrily trying to smoke them all, and then I went into the bathroom and then I threw up because I didn't have social media.
That's right. Otherwise, you would have been broadcasting it on social media for all of your friends to see, and then you would have, you know, gone in a different direction.
Right. So many of my mistakes would have been broadcasted. Speaking of mistakes broadcasted, and this is exactly what we're talking about, how hard it is to be a youngster. Yes. This is, as I'm sure you've seen this is Libs of TikTok. This is happening this is from a college in Arizona.
It made me so angry.
It makes me so angry too. And it's like, what do I even say to my, anyway, here's the clip. What did I do wrong?
I can't.
You're offensive. Police lives matter?
You have the same sticker.
We're just trying to do school.
What?
You guys have the same sticker the other.
But this is our space.
We've got a Police Lives Matter sticker and we're getting kicked out. Can't do school. You just said we have to leave.
No, I said you're making the space uncomfortable. But you're white. Do you understand what a multicultural space? It means you're not being centered.
White's not a culture?
No, it's not a culture. White is not a culture. Say it again to the camera. You think whiteness is a culture?
This is insane.
So anyways, this is the violence that ASU does, and this is the type of people that they protect.
Violence.
Okay, this white man thinks he can take up our space. And this is why we need a multicultural space.
Yeah, I get itchy. I can't with that kind of the part of people like promoting segregation is just like, as a Jewish person, it's just too much for me to kind of watch and take down. But I have to give those guys a lot of credit for them maintaining their composure. Depending on the day, today I may or may not have been able to. Back then, like when I was that age, absolutely not. And it would have been ugly. Ugly with a capital UG.
Yeah, and I wonder, it'll be interesting to see as like Gen Z kind of grows up and comes into their adulthood, like the effect of this feeling of like I could be monitored at any time. My actions and words could be broadcast to fucking a garbage TikTok account. No, like anywhere on the internet. Like the effects of that on a whole generation, like you're kind of hampering yourself. Or maybe it's the challenge they need to really like grow and overcome and be like, okay,
no way. The luxury of the future will be privacy. The luxury will be, there will be people who will be paying to be off the grid and be away from all of this insanity and all of the downsides that go with it. That will be what a luxury is in the future, because it's insane to have everything that you have ever done in life, especially as a child or a preteen or a teen or a college kid, or even in your 20s, weighing against everything else you do and being judged in the court of public opinion that doesn't even have any sort of like rules or redemption associated with it.
And like the tone of voice at which like those girls approach, it's like, I think they just, I was like,
they're looking for trouble.
Yeah, they're looking for trouble. She sounds like she's leading a protest. It's literally her and this one other chick. And it's like, you've watched too many like protest videos or like been to too many protests. It's like,
well, the sad thing is it's a victim mentality, right? It's like she has been inculcated with the way that I get, attention and feedback is by like thinking less of myself and approaching things as a victim, and you don't become successful and you don't become productive and you don't add value to yourself and your life and to society with that mindset. And that's really the sad part about it. She's young. I'm sure this is just something that she's picked up, that she's mimicking, that she's seen work in other places. And it's she's the one that's going to end up paying the price for that. And it's very sad.
The library was not even full. Like there are so many other places they could have sat. And those guys, like you could tell by their reaction, if that was some sort of like special multicultural table, there certainly was no like marking. There was nothing to mark that as such.
But again, what does that mean? Like, why are we segregating? Like, what is that? Like they said, multicultural means like everybody. I mean, it's like segregation is bad. Like, this is what we've learned our entire lives. Segregation is bad. Now we're an animal farm, and all the words have separate meetings. Or 1984, and all the words have separate meetings. It's insane. Like it's just bad.
Like, do you want
bad.
A special brown table in the middle? And it's like you could tell by their reactions they weren't like on purpose sitting there to be dicks. Like they were surprised. They were just like, oh, we're trying to do school. They said
the only thing that would have been funnier if they just had like big headphones and just put them on and just like tuned them out and like didn't do any, like just didn't even say anything.
That would have been a boss move. Yeah, just be like studying, bye, and then like what, just go sit there.
Right, exactly.
It would be so hard though for those kids to just not be like, just give them the.
As I said, at that, I mean, I give them all the credit. They must have been. It must be something about being, a part of that generation, because I would not have been having any of that at that point in time. And as I said, 50-50 today to what I would have said. So.
Yeah, I guess every generation has their like hallmark behavior of like, oh, this is what these girls or these guys do for attention.
Right.
But yeah, I'm happy I'm not. There would be a lot of videos of me like screaming at people and just like losing my shit.
Exactly.
But like, you know what? If I look at who I was in college, I would probably have been the asshole with the phone, because I was like a feminist. I was like taking women's studies classes. Like I was in a Students for Social Justice club. I didn't even really know. It just was like, that's what my friends were doing. And I was like, how do you not like the gays? Like, that's where I was at. I don't know.
Yeah, and
But
I mean, like I was, I went to a business school. Like I was all about business. Like I wasn't active. In fact, the funniest thing about me, which a lot of people don't know, is that like I wasn't even interested in politics at all. I'm still, by the way, I still hate politics, but like I didn't even know anything until like, decade and a half ago. I got dragged into this accidentally. And so before that, I had like no opinions on pretty much anything. I just wanted to do my thing and stay out of the fray. And at that point in time, you really could. It's not so much of an option since everything is politicized these days.
yeah, I really feel for these college kids because all this shit is the virtue signaling, the putting cameras in each other's faces. It's such a distraction. Like there is enough working towards you to like do poorly in college, right? Like you have to form relationships, dealing with professors, you're away from home, like you may or may not like need to have a full-time job. That kid at the end
Right.
was like, yeah, I work 60 hours a week because my parents don't give me any money to be here, like basically saying I'm not privileged. There's no, and she like was just not hearing any of that at all. And I feel for that perspective a lot because that.
Well, on top of the fact that they're probably paying 6 figures for an education that's going to get them a mid-5-figure job on top of it that they were, tricked into by the U.S. government when they were a minor. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that kids are having to deal with these days, and I definitely feel for them.
I'm gonna get to a couple of super chats. Thank you, KCG. Just wanted to support the show and can't wait to see Chrissy on Friday Night Tights. We need more intelligent conversation like this. Yeah, that's the podcast I'm gonna do as soon as we are finished.
Woohoo.
But okay. Hey, Chrissy, do you do any shows in Illinois or are the venues all gay here about the jab? I'm going to have to look into that. I do love me some deep dish. I would go back to Chicago.
That's where I'm based, right?
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I'm in Chicago. Chicago.
Oh,
so you can come out and see me. But I do have to say it's particularly in the Chicagoland area. It's super strict. The suburbs, maybe like a Zanies in the suburbs may not be as much, and maybe outside, like, kind of some of the southern parts of Illinois. But Chicago is, we're like on the Pritzker Newsom, level of insanity. So, yeah.
From Matthew Hammond, do the Bain Capitals of the world give investment bankers a bad name?
So there's a lot of confusion. So Bain Capital is actually a private equity firm. Investment banking is on the sell side, and Bain Capital is on the buy side of a transaction. So what that means in sort of layman's terms is, as an investment banker, for example, I was in corporate finance. I was helping companies raise money or sell their business. And so we're on the marketing side of that. And the buyers could be a strategic buyer, or it could be a private equity firm like Bain Capital. So they're on the other side of the transaction. I think a lot of things give investment bankers a bad name. Some of those being investment bankers, by the way, and other participants on Wall Street. But there's, even within investment banking, there's so many different functions between the people who are raising the capital, the people who are in capital markets, placing shares, people who are doing proprietary trading that sometimes consider themselves investment bankers. So I think that just in general, anything that's around financial literacy or economic literacy, most people don't have experience with and don't understand, find it a little bit opaque, and some of that's by design. And so their lack of understanding says Wall Street is bad. And even though there's a lot of parts of Wall Street that have a lot of issues, it's important to sort of slice and dice. And even on the private equity side, I mean, there's a very valid reason for private equity, and there are a lot of really great private equity firms. Doesn't mean that there aren't some things that aren't so great, and some firms that aren't so great. But lumping everybody into the same category, just like individuals, right? We all need to be sort of evaluated individually.
I like it. Another good businessy question. What has led to corruption at big businesses? Should stock buybacks be banned in favor of giving bonuses to employees, or allowing businesses to keeping 6 to 12 months of expenses emergency fund tax-free?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I never like any regulation on this kind of stuff because it has unintended consequences. When I was growing up in investment banking, the reason you did a stock buyback, which is basically it's a capital allocation decision. You have extra capital and you're saying, what's the best use of this capital? Should I go and buy a company? Should I go and pay down my debt? Should I go and buy back some of our stock? The only reason you would do a buyback is because your stock was significantly undervalued by the market. And we used to do these accretion dilution analyses that would show, okay, yeah, this is actually going to be a better use of my capital than the other potential uses that I have for whatever's sitting on the balance sheet right now. And because of, again, the Fed's disruption of risk in the market and putting so much money in and keeping interest rates close to zero and keeping kind of like debt out there. I mean, you can get debt so cheaply, like you're never going to pay down debt as a choice of capital allocation, which is what we're usually evaluating a stock buyback against. So I don't think we should be having that kind of legislation. What we should be doing is reining in the Federal Reserve and reining in their intervention in the market so that it looks more like a free market and that companies are making decisions that make a lot more sense. I also think it's important for investors in the market to stand up for long-termism. Basically, right now, everybody is so short-term focused and everybody's managing from quarter to quarter. And if you do that, you're not making the kind of long-term investments that are going to pay off. But that's kind of a mindset shift. And I think that only happens with that first step of getting the Federal Reserve out of this massive intervention in the markets. Just my opinion.
Is that even possible?
I mean, anything's possible, right? They derive their authority from Congress, so to speak. But there's a lot of powerful people that are all involved in that little cozy relationship between the Fed and Congress and whatnot. So, just like anything else, it's possible, but boy, the rot goes pretty deep.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the truth. Brian said, kids today don't care about driving. It's all TikTok and info blocks. They are dumbed down.
I mean, we were dumb too. We were just dumb in a different way. Like we were dumb and like,
Privately.
oh, let's, get this random person to buy us beer when we're 14 and get, shit-faced at our friend's house and, do all this kind of, we were stupid. We were just a different kind of stupid.
Yeah, we would be dropping Snickers down our pants and then we'd jump in the pool. Well, that's just the lifeguards. We would play tricks on each other and be like, oh.
Watch a little too much Caddyshack, I guess.
People really did do that, though, for real. And then over time, we would be like, oh, that's too uniform. That's got to be a Snickers bar. That's not a real poop.
Baby Ruth, baby.
From Russell Hall, I mean, I can understand why some people would be bothered seeing someone attacked because of their race, but at the same time, they're flaunting white privilege. Would it kill them to put on blackface? Yeah. George Habib wants to know your view on Trump as a businessman. He's ordering your book.
Well, this may blow up my ordering, but thank you. So yeah, he's obviously, I think that his most masterful business skill was certainly marketing and promotion. In terms of creating branding for himself and his business, I mean, he's unparalleled. If you go back into popular culture before he ran for president and just kind of looked at the number of places that he kind of popped up, and he was sort of the Hollywood emblem of like, oh, this is what the businessman guy is. Regardless of what was actually going on in, some of his businesses. I mean, that, he was just a genius in terms of marketing. I mean, the fact that he didn't even build a lot of these properties, but he would partner to get his name put on them so that he could take credit and then kind of parlay that into something else and get paid a management fee and all these kinds of things. I mean, that is a really valuable skill. And I think obviously he parlayed that to becoming the most powerful man in the world at one point in time. But in terms of other things, I mean, obviously his kind of arena that he had the most success in was real estate. Again, some of that, not actually being an owner of the underlying properties, but, as kind of a joint venture partner or marketing partner, and had certainly a lot of good counsel and advice in terms of navigating, it seems like anyway, the ways to sort of pay less taxes and, get cash flows into, different places. But in terms of some of the other businesses that he was in, obviously he wasn't as successful. So I don't look at him and see him as a business mind like I would consider a Jeff Bezos or, earlier on as an investor like a Warren Buffett. I think his specialty was really that marketing and PR and branding. And so if you were to, kind of look at the case study of him, I would sort of look at it from that perspective.
So until Trump gets a penis-shaped spaceship, you will not think as highly of him as you do Jeff Bezos. Okay.
It's not a question of thinking highly. It's just in terms of evaluating business acumen. And the reality is, like, I try to separate art from artists. I don't really get caught up in people as much as, like, evaluating some output or product, because, people are complicated and nuanced. And I think, we try to look at everything very, one-dimensionally.
How adult of you.
I'm very silly about a lot of things, but do have some mature things. Is there any, by the way, we didn't really do any True South Park things. So is there anything that you wanted me as we wrap up to bust out here?
Oh gosh. Maybe I was going to ask you, because I know you're a big proponent of small business, but big hair. So I don't know, in whatever, I guess, accent you would like, could you describe your hair regime or tips for big hair?
Okay, so I'll do Jimmy Vollmer, who's my favorite. If you guys don't know who Jimmy Vollmer is, go look him up after we do this impression.
Yay.
And that's Timmy.
Oh, whoops.
Timmy and Jimmy. And I'm going to first do the piece, from the sort of Raisins / was it the Raisins? No, I'm going to do the one. I take it back. I'm going to do the one where Wendy breaks up. Oh, I guess that is the goth girl one. Yes. So the one where Wendy breaks up and Stan goes and has Jimmy say something, but I'll put your name in instead of Wendy's name in, and then I'll talk about my hair. So, Chrissy, Stan told me to tell you that you're a cunt. You're a cunt. You're a cunt. You're a cunt. You're a continuing source of inspiration to him. So, hey guys, wow, what a great crowd. So, I advocate for like big hair and small business.
It's all about in like the trailing off at the end. Wow.
So that's my Jimmy Vollmer impression. So on the spot.
So Chad is loving it. It's everyone's very impressed.
You know. But I do other ones. I do like Kermit the Frog and Miss Piggy, and like it just depends on the day what I'm sort of feeling like. It's important work that I do.
Yeah,
I'd like to do a voiceover of like a cartoon. I think that'd be super fun.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
If I know anybody.
Yeah, if you know anyone who's looking, I have, as I said, I have a pretty good range, totally goofy, and absolutely no limit. So I'm like willing to pretty much go for anything.
I love it. Ooh, I see that as like a second or third career move for you. What I really
want to do, I think I told you this before, is I want to be a game show host. Like that's what I really want to do. But absent game shows, I could totally do a cartoon.
Yeah. Or I could see you giving like little, I don't know, snippets of like business advice.
Business advice in the name of Erica. Okay, guys, this is like a totally cool business experience. Okay, like seriously, guys, you have to pay attention. I'm gonna get home. Okay, cool.
Everybody, buy Carol's book, The War on Small Business, and don't buy it from Amazon. Buy it from bookshop.org. Help out a smaller business.
That's good. They fulfill from all different local small business booksellers. So it's not just like one entity. So it's like whoever is like closest to you, I guess it is the way they sort of fulfill. So they're like the aggregation service. It's actually pretty neat.
I love it. I love it. And Carol, where else can people find you and follow you?
Oh man, I'm so sick of people finding me. No, I'm just kidding.
Aw.
As long as you don't send me weirdo mail, like those are the people that are like, track down my mailing address and send me like weird, like, like diagrams of things. And I'm like, I don't like, I don't have time for this. But yes, if you want to connect with me, that I spend most of my time on Twitter at Carol JS Roth. Put the JS in the middle or you will not find me. And turn on the notifications because Twitter likes to throttle my account and you probably won't see me even if you do follow me unless you do that. And if you ever have like a business question or something, you want to get in touch with me. And again, no weird like diagrams. I have a contact form at carolroth.com where you can reach out and always happy to be helpful for a quick question.
Awesome, Carol. Thank you so much for coming on. I'll have to have you back because you're just a wealth of humor and knowledge.
Oh, you're so sweet. Well, you're the best. And now I'm like excited for you to come out to Chicago at some point. We'll get some deep dish.
Yeah.
I've got a pinball machine in my living room, so maybe we'll play some pinball.
I'm sold.
Yeah.
I like Illuminati's. I went there twice the last time I was in Chicago.
Lou and I have a very special relationship. Lou actually follows me on Twitter. And
no way.
Oh yeah. Well, no, like he's not. Well, I mean, he probably was back in the day, but yeah, like Lou Malnati's follows me, and like every once in a while, I will post like some kind of food porn thing of like, oh, hello, lover.
It's good. It's messy, but it's good.
Oh, it's so good, so good. Highly recommend Lou Malnati's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to plan a Chicago trip then.
Amazing. Where are you based?
New York. Okay. Yeah, not the city. Like
Bridge and Tunnel.
Bridge and Tunnel for life, baby. I'm Long Island, born and bred, and now I'm in Westchester. So
Oh, now you're all fancy. Okay.
It's only like slightly less of a self tanner kind of vibe, but yeah. Carol, this was great. Thanks for coming on. Can't wait to have you back. Thank you, chat. Thank you for the questions. Some of them were actually really intelligent. You guys are getting smarter, I think.